Welcome to Spiritual as Fuck,
Spiritual as fuck.
where spirituality meets the real world. I'm Liz Volpe, social entrepreneur, psychic medium, teacher, and founder of the Intuition Academy. I am passionate about inspiring people to dream big and change the world.
I'm Diane Driscoll, a coach, facilitator, keynote speaker, and self-directed healing practitioner. I am fascinated with all things science, spirituality, and self-leadership, and love the journey of incorporating my spiritual gifts into my life and business.
We share real and raw spiritual stories, give you a safe space to challenge what's normal, and have some serious fun along the way. If the podcast isn't enough, we invite you to our monthly online events and workshops with some of the world's best spiritual teachers.
Plus, join our Spiritual Renegades community and get bonus episodes and lots of exclusive content. Everything you need to be spiritual as fuck.
Welcome back, everybody, and welcome back, Diane, all the way from Ireland. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's like 1 a.m. over here.
Oh my God, the dedication to the spiritual as fuck listeners is unbelievable. Crown, you deserve a crown, girl.
Good job. We're talking about spiritual awakening. It's like I am wide awake.
Oh, that's right. Now, before we kick off today's subject, I want to just do a shout out to all of you amazing people that are pushing us up the Apple charts week in and week out. My goodness, we have been appearing in all different countries around the world. And Diane and I just want to say a huge thank you, because each review, each testimonial, each time we see ourselves appear there, it just makes it all worthwhile, doesn't it, Diane?
Absolutely. Makes our little hearts sing.
It does. So keep doing what you do, everyone. And yes, Diane has already said it. Today we are delving into spiritual awakenings again. This is a subject that kind of launched the podcast right in the beginning, a year and a half ago now, when Diane and I thought that after going through a spiritual awakening, like, holy shit, this needs to be spoken about more. At the time, we shared some of our experience with spiritual awakening. And today we felt that it would be really great to actually speak to our tips. What are the things in hindsight that we would have loved to have known? And look, we all see it. There are so many people awakening at the moment. I don't know about you, Diane, but, I surf across social media and like every day I'm seeing like help, shit, I'm talking
Yes.
spiritual awakening. I'm going through this, I'm going through that. And, my heart goes out to any of you that are currently in one, because holy shit, yes, they are challenging. And everyone's awakening can be quite different. So I feel like today, hopefully, we will be able to share some of our experiences and some very simple and basic things that you can do and implement immediately to start to feel like you're gaining a little bit of control back.
Yeah, I think we thankfully now, Liz and I, have the benefit of hindsight. So
Yes.
it's, I think, one of those first episodes that we did, and we were sharing some elements of our spiritual awakening. This was still pretty raw for us back then. And now I look at it and I think, even preparing for this episode, it's like trying to remember what was it like going through this, and what are some of the tips and tricks that we would like to pass on for anyone who may feel that they're going through, because we know how difficult it is at that point in time. And yes, we laugh about it, and yes, we joke about it, but both of us were a blubbering mess at different points.
Feels easy
Thinking
now.
we were going crazy. Yeah, exactly. We can look back at it and laugh now. But yeah. And spiritual awakening is not something that just happens once. There are, multiples that happen. So yeah.
Yeah. It's a good thing to say that, actually, to launch things, because they can be very unexpected. They can be gradual and slow and, nice, and they can be hardcore and fast and life-changing. So I feel like you don't ever just have one.
Yes.
I know I can recount that. I've had numerous. I wouldn't even be able to tell you the amount of them, but they've all been different. So I feel like if we were to encapsulate what an awakening is, it's that great shift where suddenly your values, your priorities, can't even say it, look at that, priorities are instantly shifted. We start to view everything slightly differently. So
Yes.
yeah, I mean, Diane, in terms of you looking back to yours, Can you describe the feeling of the awakening if you were to pinpoint like one particular time during the awakening?
Yeah, like for me, it was the instant moment. And like, again, for anyone who hasn't listened to those earlier episodes,
Mm.
Liz and I experienced our awakening in very different ways. So yeah, if you don't identify completely with what I'm saying, don't worry. It doesn't mean that mine is the only way to awaken. But at the time, I wouldn't have known it was a Kundalini awakening, but mine was literally on a very specific day at a very specific moment in time.
Wow.
I was lit up with energy and electricity. And, I look back now and I laugh at it and I still get a bit embarrassed. It's like on that episode I mentioned about it being like in an orgasmic state. Now that was me fumbling for words to be able to say that literally I was just charged with energy, that my whole body was lit up and I didn't know what to do with all this energy. Um, and then also, and again, hindsight is a wonderful thing because now that I look back, I got massive amount of clarity on things that needed to change in my life. And almost like a degree of urgency that these things need to change. They
Mm.
needed to change right now. And none of them were small things. None of them were, it was, to do with my marriage, my work, my relationships in my life. Like so many huge things started to stem from that point in time. So it wasn't like spiritual awakening was nibbling around the edges and kind of, pulling a little frayed knot. This was literally about to unravel everything for me. I didn't know that at that point in time, but now looking back, I guess to give hope to anyone who's listening is the fact that now I can clearly see they were all the things that I had either been keeping my head in the sand, avoiding, just accepting in my life, and things that were less than ideal. So things that weren't serving me, things that weren't working for me. And, the thing I know now is that because they weren't working for me, they weren't working for those around me either, because, nothing can be working fantastically for one person in isolation. It's like we have a ripple effect on the people we work with, the people in our family, those that we love and who are nearest and dearest to us. And
Oh,
now I look back
interesting.
and I think all that unraveling was for the greater
Yeah.
good.
Do you know, I
Absolutely.
think after hearing you say that, then it was almost like you may have been in a spiritual awakening actually for a number of months or years before that, but it took this extreme lighting up of energy, Kundalini,
Yes.
moment to shift you because maybe you hadn't shifted already. It took for maybe some divine intervention there where it's like, okay, we've been trying here. Let's really awaken her now. Let's make her
It's
take
so
note
funny.
here.
So here's the real time kind of play between Liz and I, because it is how we kind of soundboard off each other. And it is, when you say that, I just think, yeah, 2016, I had a total mental health breakdown. And that was the very, very beginning. Well, I say
Yes.
very beginning of the big stages. And like when you have a mental health breakdown, there is no bigger slap in the face that's going
Mm.
to tell you you need to change your life. And if I still didn't listen, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, she's kind of listening. She's kind of, changing her life. She's kind of adjusting some things here, but it's still not good enough. It's not quick enough. It's not whatever.
Mm.
And I do believe very much that we do have a soul's purpose and a calling and a path that each of us are on. And it was like that major course correction that I was having. It's like, okay, you're tracking off, you're tracking off, you're tracking off. You're not listening to these little nudges that the universe are giving you. And, you keep wandering off in this direction. It's like, okay, now we're going to give you this big, huge slap from the universe, which is your spiritual awakening, that you've got no choice but to show up for. And yeah, I look back at it and I think I don't know that it could have ended up any way other than it did. Like
10 out of 10 for being at Earth School for you, Diane. You are
yeah,
remembering. Good job.
get a gold star for
You
Earth
have a
School.
gold star. Well done. Thinking back to the 21-year-old awakening that I'd been to, and I just think how amazing it was. It literally was as simple as not a care in the world, being an adventurous young 20-year-old, with big open eyes and curious to learn and eager to learn everything from the moment of walking through the shopping center and being drawn, like pulled into the bookshop, the first deck of angel cards. How different, look at how different they were. And I feel like at that point, it was almost like the spirit team around me were like, look, she's really loving learning at the moment. So this is the perfect way to do it. Let's just give her a deck of angel cards, and from that one, split decision of picking up and going ahead and trusting my intuition to buy the cards, to then going on a journey for years of literally devouring any bit of a book, like a workshop, anything I could to learn, because I just found it so amazing. And I think if we were to put our tips into, a list, which we will today, that element of learning is, I think, number one of the things you have to do when you feel like you're in a spiritual awakening. Because you go from a state of, yes, you may have always been interested in this type of stuff. You may have listened to the podcast or read a couple of spiritual books, but you don't know or understand a spiritual awakening, number one, till you're experiencing it. No one can explain it. No one can explain it. So when suddenly you feel a shift, you need to go and learn from some reputable people and places. And you need to make sure you're reading and learning the right things to start with. And for me, that sense of learning has really been my guide throughout everything. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I reckon for me it was, the guides and the mentors and all that came a little bit later. It's that sense of, up until that point, I learned for fun. I learned because I was interested. And I went in and I, picked up the oracle cards and I picked up the spiritual books and there was just that interest. But then once I went through my awakening, it was actually a desperation. It was pure desperation. I need answers. I don't know what the hell's going on with me. I feel like I'm having another mental breakdown. Just give me some answers. And that, not having answers on tap was one of the things that drove us to create this podcast. But that sense of going down so many different rabbit holes, looking in so many different places. And for me, Google, yes, was my friend, but Instagram, the most unlikely places of where I just seem to have a lot of things flooding towards me. But it wasn't until because there's so much information and some of it is good, some of it's bad, some of it you
so much
instantly
information.
have those visceral feelings of, oh no, I'm not listening to that person or I'm not following it. But you don't know where the trusted sources are in those early stages. You're just devouring everything. And it takes a while. And I guess that's one of the tips within learning is to be discerning about where you get your information, like really, really. And then having someone like a trusted mentor or a coach, that's when things completely shifted for me. And I'm just going to do a shout out to both Felicity and Pauline for my early stage, coaches and mentors. But it wasn't until I had someone who was letting me know, okay, you're not going crazy. Here's some things that you need to do, or that I could soundboard some questions of. That was a game changer for me.
Oh, yes. You have to find your person, and everything you just said then spot on. The amount of junk that's out there is crazy. And what? I still read everything, but I always take everything with a pinch of salt, and I feel into,
Yes.
what kind of rings true for me. But honestly, just on the most basic level, and I'm not doing a plug here, but if I was to say to anyone who had never read any type of a book or anything before, like, just go to Hay House. Like, the books
Yes.
that all of the authors, well, I don't know about all of them because I've not read all of the books, but for the books that I personally have read, if you want to get an overview of spirituality from a nice place in a beautiful, kind way, it's not scary, it will put you
Yes.
at ease. It's all of the basics. It's Hay House, right? Like,
Yes.
I feel like that's just the trusted place to go. Go onto their
Yeah.
website, order a couple of books. There was one book that I read. It was one of the first books. It was called Journey of a Soul. I'm going to have to put it in the show notes, the author of it, but it was like the turning point book that opened me up to exploring more. And it was just around the soul's journey.
Yes.
And that even in itself of starting to question, wait a minute. So what are my beliefs? Where did we come from? What is reincarnation? why am I starting to feel things? You need to get answers. And the only way you can get answers is to find a few places to learn. And whether it be from a specific person or from a book or a podcast, ask people for recommendations, trusted
Yes.
people,
Trusted people.
trusted
Yes.
people, and explore. Take yourself to a spiritual shop and stand in front of the books and pick up a couple and just start to
See
read.
what calls to you. Absolutely. It's perfect lead into number two, which is to trust your intuition,
Oh,
or
yeah.
your inner voice, because we doubt ourselves so much. Like I said, we think we're going crazy, but if you've all of these things going on, you're starting to question your whole existence, you're really looking at your life in a totally different way, that and you won't naturally do this at the time, but this is where Liz and I are, trying to go with that benefit of hindsight and some of our hard learned lessons. But if you trust that inner voice and really tune into it as much as you can, into your intuition, what is it telling you? And it is like, I know even for me in those early stages, thinking, oh my gosh, am I having this mental breakdown? Is it something physical? Like, do I need to go and see a doctor? And I kept having this, and for me, it was the sense of knowing in my body that no, this is metaphysical. This is not mental, and it's not physical. It's metaphysical. Was the like I just felt that that's what it was. So I trusted that. So I never went to the doctor. I didn't go. And sit on my therapist's sofa. And I'm not joking about that. I'm serious, because I was seeing a psychologist at the time. It wasn't something that I chose. It was like, no, this all, while it felt so wrong and so out there, it still felt so right, that it was meant to be happening. This was all happening for a reason. And I did come to trust that. So for you, Liz, because like obviously you are the CEO and founder of the Intuition Academy. Intuition is a big thing for you. Um, but for you, at that awakening stage, if you can give some pearls of wisdom or what it felt like for you at that point in time, what would you say to our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, because, the most recent was an explosion for me. And it was an explosion in the sense of intuition. I'd always
Yeah.
been and considered myself intuitive, but really all I knew about intuition was every so often I got a gut feeling. Like that was really,
Yeah.
I had lots of experiences of going, whoa, that was kind of magic, wow, I just knew that. But the last awakening exploded the senses wide open. So I went from not just your average touch of gut feeling or hunch, it went from, in the waking moments, I'd be receiving flashes, clairvoyance, images, information, where I was like, what the hell is that? And only then, later that day, that week, when suddenly things were happening that had played out clairvoyantly, one morning on a Monday, was I like, what the hell? And that was a serious thing of having to really roll with it and trust my intuition. But it was scary for me. Like there was a
Yeah.
lot of fear around that. So I found for me when it came to like trusting underneath that there wasn't anything to be scared about, but at the same time, trying to process the information, like actually writing it down was really important in the process of trusting my intuition. So when
Yes.
images were flashing in, when I was suddenly having a really intensified feeling, because really that's what spiritual awakening is, right? Suddenly you are
Yes.
opened up very fast. Your sensitivity is very high. I was starting to at least have the awareness to write it down. Okay, what am I feeling? What just happened? What flashed in for me? Write it, write it, write it. And then suddenly a week later, when that thing happened, it wasn't just a case of me questioning myself. What? I'm sure, Monday morning that flashed in. No, I had written proof. So I couldn't doubt it because I was noting
Yes.
everything down. So I feel like that was how I then started to trust my intuition through the process. And then it was my North Star. Okay, I'm just going to trust my intuition. I'm going to touch in. How do I feel? What's coming to me? And I navigated it like that.
That's fascinating the way you put that, because in a very different way, because I was literally afraid to journal at that point in time. I didn't want to write anything down.
I get like that, yes.
Exactly. And I'm a writer, like I'm someone who loves pen and paper. But I started writing notes into my phone. And it was for me because I'm a coach and also because of my mental health issues, like up until that point, I would take notes and almost like coach myself through so I could look back at it to see, am I losing my mind, or am I, or is there, is there a thread of sanity in here somewhere? But it was that, now looking back on it, it was being able to trust myself, trust my intuition, trust that this is happening for a reason. So yeah, having somewhere that you can safely make sense of your thoughts and allow yourself to feel into it. What is it your intuition is telling you? And especially like for me, I wasn't getting the clairvoyance, claircognizance, all of that. That like, well, claircognizance I definitely was, clairsentience I was, but I again probably wouldn't have labeled them those things
Yeah.
then that like I'm doing now. Whereas for you, you were getting that thick and fast. And again, everybody's experience is different. But if you are starting to get images and symbols and things like that coming through, definitely journaling. But I think it's
Yes.
beneficial for anybody to do that to help you trust your intuition, to help you
Yeah.
not think you're
And
crazy.
believe like that this shit's true. I'm just getting a memory come up for me, and this was so funny. I remember I have like an upside down house, so like upstairs is a living area, and I'd been downstairs and I'm doing the laundry or something, and suddenly I'm getting this flash of a dinosaur, a specific dinosaur in my head, and I'm like, what the hell? And I literally get the laundry and carry it upstairs, and the first image on the TV is a picture at that very moment that flashed on the TV of a dinosaur.
Validation.
So I'm laughing through this, like, okay, yeah, I am going crazy, but this shit is happening, I'm telling you. But
it gives you the evidence. It does, and that helps you
need
trust
to
yourself.
journal the evidence.
Yeah.
But I feel like, again, that leads perfectly onto the third most important thing on going through a spiritual awakening is having a trusted person, one person, whether it be a friend, your husband or wife or family member, that you can actually just say this stuff out loud to. I know for me, like my husband from the start, even though he was like scared to death with the shit I was saying, he was just so good and he just listened to me. So he was good in terms of allowing me just to say it out loud, and he was the closest person there experiencing it live.
Yes.
But then having a best friend to just phone up and go, okay, like I've just been in the shower and the voice of your granddad just came through. Is he called this? Which used to happen all the time. But she just used to listen as well. And I didn't get a sense of ever being judged for it. She was also spiritually curious and she was excited for me.
Yes.
That just helped so much.
Oh, yeah. And I do, like, I will say, and this is actually advice I give to people that I coach with mental health issues as well, that be discerning about who you choose. So you might have a bestie, you may have a person that is your better half, and you will go to them about most other things in life. But your spiritual awakening is something very different. So being discerning about who that person is that you go to, and seek someone who is open-minded, non-judgmental, and compassionate, because you are going to need someone who is a good listener, that is not going to be coming at you with 20 questions when you're trying to figure everything out for yourself as well. And like no matter how much you love your other half, if you're in a relationship, then they may not be ready for this sort of thing. And I know for me, I definitely wasn't able to speak to my husband about any of these things at that point in time, but that was like our marriage was in decline at that point. So for me, it's not don't assume that your best friend or a person that you might go to with other things. Really, again, trust your intuition about who is the person that you should go and speak to about these things, because not everything on your spiritual journey can be shared with everyone. And we lose friends along the way. So if you start to open that up, I know I've lost a lot of friends where once I started talking about this, it was too much for people. And that's okay. That's their experience. But knowing, and for me, my go-to person was my youngest sister. And similarly to you, Liz, it was like, yeah, took everything, like just listened with, was spiritually curious, asked some beautiful questions, reminded me I wasn't going crazy, and
Ah,
just held space for me going through all of this and was genuinely interested in what I was going through as well. So find your person, because there's only so much of this that we can sense make on our own. We need other people.
yeah. And oh, yeah. I mean, I've also made the mistake of speaking to the wrong people and
Yeah.
walked away feeling either shamed or shut down. And that just made it all
Oh,
elevated. I was already having to question the meaning of life, in every
yeah.
sense. And then
Yeah.
suddenly I'm having someone that's questioning me on the experience. And the thing is, when someone questions like a psychic experience or a mediumship experience, like you don't have an explanation either at that stage through a spiritual
Yeah.
awakening. You don't even need someone to explain it. There's not an explanation. It's more that you just need someone to listen and to support. So
Yes.
yeah, some
Yeah,
people
definitely.
are not going to be the right people, 100%.
Yeah. So be discerning when you find that friend. But I'm just gonna recap. So we spoke about, so far we spoke about number one is learning, number two is trusting your intuition, number three is find a friend, like find your buddy, your
Find your
spiritual
Diane.
buddy. Yes, find your Liz. But let's get a little bit more practical as well. So, when we were going through this, number four for us that we both agreed was critically important was all around grounding. And, in the beginning, you're not even going to know what grounding necessarily is or why it's important. And for us, like even our supercharged session, which was all about ground like a gangster, which we've just recently done, it's like we want to be practical and share these things with people. But grounding for me, I know that Liz, you've spoken about this before as well, because I felt there was so much electricity going through my body,
Mm,
and I'm a science-based person, so I was thinking about coming to ground,
mm,
discharging all of that energy out of my body into the ground, but also that sense that you feel like you're floating away with the fairies. Like I was just up in the clouds. I wasn't able to function normally, like things like making the dinner, getting the homework done, working,
mm.
doing things. I just felt like I was not able to function in my normal capacity. So
Oh
the
God.
kinds of things that I did was I would get up for sunrise every morning, every single morning at sunrise, do a meditation, barefoot walks along the beach, or on the grass. Like, so it was either, feet in the sand or in the ocean or in the grass. The other thing that I did, which was a little bit later, not much later, but breath work. And that was to bring me back into
Mm,
my body. So maybe not strictly speaking grounding, but I felt it very grounding. But it would bring me back into my physical body doing that breath work. On a yeah, it ended up later becoming a practice that I would do all of the time. But if I needed something instantly to ground me and I couldn't get my feet on grass, it was always my breath that I would turn to. For
yeah.
you, Liz, your grounding practices, like especially like both in the early stages, like what were you doing and what were your experiences, but then what have you kind of evolved into for grounding
Yeah. I
over the
mean,
years?
I feel like grounding is one of those things where people go like, nah. Nah, I don't need to do that,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, just walk walk on grass.
Mhm.
But so important. I mean, again, my God, did I need grounding? Like, oh, holy shit. During my last awakening, I was constantly dizzy. My mind was actually flowing. I would be sometimes like actually stumbling to the side. My
Ooh.
ears were buzzing, ringing. It was like my balance had shifted. And looking back now, it was because, again, my energy had just shifted to a different place. I was completely elevated. So, yes, I agree. That sense of being in my head, not being able to chain sentences together, feeling like my feet were
Yes.
off the ground.
Mhm.
Like I went from being what I class as like semi-normal person to talking to spirit. And that to me
Yeah.
was like, whoa, scary, ungrounding, yes, in the clouds, and having my feet on the sand, getting near the sea. That was like something that made me feel safe and made me feel, yeah, it really did bring me back to earth with that kind of
Yeah.
practice. And yeah, bringing in the crystals, the black crystals. I know we've spoken recently about that in our episode.
Yeah.
Like, but sometimes literally clinging on to my black crystals. Like, okay, you
I
put it on.
sometimes feel like I've got yeah, paw imprints on my tourmaline.
Yeah. I mean, look, nowadays, like even the grounding sheets that are out there that you can pop on your bed,
Yes.
the mats that you can put your feet in. And I feel like there's something in that type of thing as well that you can potentially use. So, bringing in whatever you can, but again, intuitively knowing what you need to do to just know that actually, yes, this is going on, but I am still a human living this 3D dimensional life. Like,
Yes.
let me just remember who I am. And then even doing things like eating. John Edwards said that to us.
Yes,
We
that's
asked him,
right.
what do you
Yeah.
do before you go or after stage to bring yourself back down? Eating.
Yes.
I do that now constantly. After a reading, I'll go and just have a snack. It pulls my energy down.
Yes, yeah. And it
So
is, like when you think of all of the physical mechanisms that eating brings into play, it has to bring, and again, it's that what breathwork would do for me, that's doing the same thing through your digestive system. It's just switching on all these mechanisms,
that's
which
right.
your body has to attend to. Yeah.
And obviously, the key after grounding, like the grounding just needs to happen every single day. And if I was to say that, morning and night, or as often as you want, right? Through
Yes.
spiritual awakening,
Yeah.
there's no right or wrong with any of these type of practices. But the other instant thing that I just knew to do was meditate. I don't know
Yes.
why. I'd never been a fan. I'm like, bloody meditation. What a load of shit, honestly. That's what I used to think. But I found myself in this spiritual awakening, pretty much sitting on my bed, like, like, what the hell am I doing? I just knew that I needed to bring myself into the present moment because I'm all over the place.
Yes.
It was almost like meditation, mindfulness kind of came hand in hand with grounding. What can I do to slow the heart rate, to make me focus on this second, not the past, not the future, not what's going on? How can I pull myself out of that crazy monkey mind that's like going, what the hell's going on, in the fear state? So
Yes.
the spending suddenly the time by myself, sat on the bed, sat in the garden, having some breath. I feel like, yeah, meditation and all that type of stuff was just like the have to. Like I just had to do it. And I've continued.
Definitely. Yeah. And I was the same. It was probably of all the things out there, it was the thing that I already had a practice in, but I was very much someone who did guided meditations, visualizations, that sort of thing. And so it wasn't difficult for me to fall into a practice of meditation because I'd already done quite a bit of it. But I know for anyone who, say, is going through their awakening at the moment and meditation is difficult for them, definitely Tai Chi or yoga, doing something, anything that will quiet the mind, that you have to be in connection. And particularly if you're going to be in connection with your body as well. Tai Chi is meditation in motion. That's what it is. It's such a beautiful thing to do, to just, be able to have that. And it helps with the grounding as well. So you're bringing the meditative state and the grounding and all of that into one. But it's so, so, so important to do that. And I know that, you had mentioned previously as well, is about rest, about getting as much sleep. And I know I felt like I was running a marathon in my sleep. And this is one of the first things I spoke to my mentor about at the time, Felicity. I was like, oh my God, I just feel that I'm running a marathon. I can't remember any of my dreams, but there's something, I feel like I'm in an action movie or something. And she was just saying, she goes, you're probably, drifting off out into the astral plane and doing something that you don't realize. And then you come back and you're exhausted from it. But I did find that I was going for naps in the middle of the day. And then I started to think to myself, I'm not going to give myself a hard time about this. So again, my intuition, listen to my intuition. My body needs rest. I'm going to rest. And then for some reason that during the day, I was able to have a proper rest, like one that I wasn't running a marathon in my sleep, rather
So
than at
true.
nighttime. I just felt that this was, yeah, I don't know where I was off visiting, but it wasn't this realm.
Well, I don't know if you remember this, but I think I explained it in like episode 1 or episode 2. Mine was like drinking like 50 Red Bulls a day.
Yes.
Do you
Yeah.
remember that? Because every
Yeah.
time I tried to go to sleep, I had spirits around me. I was being spoken to. Like this stuff was like so intense that when I was going into meditation, I got pleasure from the peace. It was like
Yes.
during that time, it actually managed to go like, okay, close for business. This is my time now. And I started to get this really deep appreciation for connecting with my higher self. It was like,
Yeah.
oh, wow, I can actually schedule this time with my higher self here and actually bring through wisdom. And that was
Yes.
the beautiful times of the early spiritual awakening for me, was this really graceful connecting with myself for the first time.
Yeah. And again, that now with the value of hindsight is how, like for me, I built my intuition as well, because you
Yeah.
quiet the chatter, you quiet the fear. There's a lot of fear going on around at that point in time. But that tranquility, that calmness that goes with meditation is a phenomenal thing. So, yes, we're not the first people to say this. It's like meditation is really good for you. You don't need the news flash for this one, but it's constantly said because it does. It works. It's so, so, so important.
I love this,
And
right? These are all obvious things, right? Well, maybe
yes,
now, I don't know, they are
no,
all
but they're
obvious,
not.
but
Meditation was something that was definitely I felt obvious when I was going through spiritual awakening. But the next one, which is number 6 that we're going to talk about, protection and cleansing, what? Like that
oh,
would
yeah.
not have been on my radar. That is not something that I would have thought about in the early stages of awakening. So when we're talking about it now, so if you're someone who's going through a spiritual awakening at the moment and you're thinking, okay, I don't know what they're talking about, protection and cleansing, very much that the more we start to open up, and again, this will be different for everyone, but you start to open up, you become more intuitive. You, like for me, whatever was happening in my dreams in the astral state, even that itself, or maybe you're starting to channel spirits or you're starting to get in touch with guides, you having some practices that help you protect yourself and to cleanse your energy. So, cleaning your energy, and it doesn't have to be done at the end of the day. It can be done, anytime throughout the day, but just being intentional about cleansing your energy, cleansing your field, sending back the energy of others, whether they be of this realm or another, sending that back to where it came from
Mm,
is such important practices. And that's not something that I would have learned for a little bit into my journey. It
oh,
still was, I
God.
was still in the thick of the awakening phase, so
Yeah.
it's still early on. And it is something that I wish I'd known a little bit earlier.
Honestly, absolutely, because I feel like you're already in a sense of confusion
Yeah.
during an awakening. And what happens is, and you just don't know this, is that so your energy is elevated, it's expansive, and it's a higher frequency. So when you are around people, it's clashing because you're on just a different state. What
Yeah.
I was finding was happening that I could be with somebody without having any inclination. I would be picking up and carrying along that person's emotions and owning them. I was like, I'm feeling really emotional. Oh my God, because it was like
Yes.
amplified. So for the first few weeks, because I was so expansive and like the energy was going off the charts, was that I was just like taking on everyone's stuff here. And so if you are going through an awakening, one of the ways that you're going to know that is if you are feeling really emotional and that's
Yes.
amplified,
Yes.
that is a big kind of red flag. Okay, cleanse your energy field. You are potentially trolling other people's stuff. You are probably carrying lots of things along with you. And even again, places, the room, the house that
Yes.
you're in, where are you operating, your workplace, that you will be picking it all up. And unfortunately, that's like something, yeah, you don't get told. And in
Yeah.
terms of cleansing, Diane, do you have like a really simple thing that people can just start today?
Yeah, I just want to say before that, just one of the questions that I had been given as advice from one of my mentors was around asking yourself, if you get particularly emotional or you've had one of those days that you feel really heavy or negative, maybe when you shouldn't be negative, just asking yourself, is this my emotion? Is
Mm.
this my energy? So just getting into the habit of that there's a possibility that it could belong to someone else. That it just because you will generally, and again, this goes back to intuition, that you will generally get that deep sense of knowing whether it belongs to you or whether it is something you picked up throughout the day. And maybe you'll get a flash of, oh, it was a room you visited, or it was a person that you spent too much time with, but you may get something. But from a cleansing standpoint, the easiest thing for me is going and having a shower, like literally imagining the water and literally every single drop that comes down on top of you, setting the intention that you are cleansing and releasing anyone else's energy. And I'll go into a lot more of that into mine now, but just it's your intention as you go through it, but making sure that if it's a shower, and if you can't get to the shower and you're just after having a really, I don't know, emotional feeling overwhelmed emotionally, imagine the shower, imagine being out in the shower
Yeah.
rain, just close your eyes because your brain doesn't know the difference between reality and what's not. So just really visualize yourself going through that. But for me, cleansing is so much, and protection are both so much about your intention, that your intention is that I am releasing anything that it does not belong to me, that is not the core part of my spirit or my soul.
Absolutely. Visualization, definitely the key there. I mean,
Mm.
honestly, I just always use the really simple ones as well. A selenite wand, and
Yeah.
wave it around me. Yeah, and even like saying, I am cleansed, drop away any negative energies. And just the shower, using sage,
Sage, yeah.
sound. To be honest, my go to is always Archangel Michael and visualizing white light coming down on me. So find
Yeah.
something. Don't feel like an idiot trying it. Just try it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Literally just try it.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly. It's and go with your intuition, but just think, what does cleansing mean to you? And use that. What does protection mean to you? Just use those things. And with all of these things, and we're the first to tell you, trial and error. It's like you'll try something, it's not going to work. Like in one of those early episodes, I think it was number 2, Liz talking about protecting and imagining this big steel suit of armor that was on, and then of course nothing was getting through. But you will have trial and error. So we're just sharing some tips and tricks with you, but it is still for you to think, oh, that resonates with me. I'll give that a go. Or here's something else that I'm thinking I might try because you're being prompted through this. But yet go with whatever is there for you.
oh, it's all coming back to me. Oh wow, don't you just love it? One other thing which we'll name as number 7 in the grand scheme of the spiritual awakening is kind of gathering the spiritual tools that you're drawn to. For Diane and I know that oracle cards, tarot cards were kind of like the
Yeah.
go-to because we'd already had some around the house because we already were interested in that. Using those cards and giving them a shuffle and going, is this actually happening to me? And getting a validation was number 1, really great. um, but bringing through and using something such as a pendulum, I found really helpful
Yes.
early days. Although I will say, I don't think I used it in the first week or 2 because I was so fearful of having spirits in my energy field. I was really scared of getting instant proof that spirit was next to me. So
Okay.
that was
Yeah.
very scary with me. But going to, my trusty, calm, nice energy of the angel cards, as an example, was my safe space. And I think I needed to gradually kind of move towards tools that maybe showed me a little bit more suddenly or honestly what was happening.
Yes. Yeah. And for me, it was like, again, similar to you, like I had tarot cards for years and years. And when I think now, I don't think that I had touched those cards. Like they were like still wrapped in like purple silk. Like that I had them wrapped up in since, I don't know, I think I'd bought that when I was in college, like the purple silk that they were wrapped in. And they had been sitting in my bedside locker drawer for years, like years,
Wow.
and I hadn't touched them. And then it was one of the first things that because I knew that there was something spiritual, I knew there was something metaphysical. And even the curiosity that was in me, it was all that old stuff that I've been interested in for so long. But yet tarot cards for me were my, okay, here's my safety, something I can go to. And now, like, I don't use pendulums. I haven't used pendulums for a long time, but it was something that I used kind of early on. And it wasn't that I went out and bought a pendulum. It was literally a ring on a chain that I was using and asking some questions with that. And dowsing rods was one of the first things that I had, like, and not even bought. This was making up myself. But similarly to you, there was that real nervousness of, oh shit, what if I get a yes?
Well, I remember that, yeah, being with the dowsing rods and shitting myself when those spoke to me. Like, never again. There's a ghost in my house. Shit, I can't sleep tonight.
Who moved that? Who moved that? But it is. Whereas the cards, I just felt, yeah, I already had an established friendly connection. And then crystals, I was called to
Yeah.
again, it was probably more that it was imprinted in my mind. What are spiritual things? Oh, I need to get some crystals. Even though I didn't know exactly what I needed to. And I went out and again intuitively led, what are some of the things that I need to get? And I remember at the time hematite was something I got, malachite, which I'm thinking, oh, I couldn't even tell you a single property of malachite now. Um, but just some of the things that you're drawn to at that point in time. So there's no right or wrong, but just experiment with tools, build your trusty toolkit, and whatever you're drawn to is going to be right for you. And you may not use it for the rest of your life, but it's just something. And again, it's something, it's an interest, it's a curiosity, it's something that will build over time.
And honestly, my husband was kind of very gracious and understanding with the crystals, and the basic stuff. But when I brought the gypsy caravan home that day, he was really pissed off. That's when he drew the line. In my crystal ball. He's like, that's enough, Liz. We've had enough right now. Jokes. Okay. I don't really own a gypsy caravan.
We don't actually have this in here as one of the numbers, but not taking yourself too seriously should be in there as one of the things.
Oh, dear.
Number 8, drum roll, we are on number 8. And this is something that you won't find immediately, I think, when you have your spiritual awakening, but you're going to want it so badly. And that is to find your tribe. You start to realize especially because bringing it back to number 1, which is learning, you're going to be out there, you're going to be looking on whether it's Instagram, on Facebook, or whether you're watching Gaia TV, you're looking at all these things, you're looking at books, you're looking at cards. So therefore, there's other people like you, you're not alone, and you've so many questions and you just want them answered. But finding a community of people who are also learning, who are growing, and provide a safe space for you to share your experience and just share learnings with each other. And
oh God,
for us,
absolutely,
that was such a driving factor for us creating our spiritual as fuck membership and renegades tribe, because it was like, we didn't have these things. Like, literally everything to do with spiritual as fuck is, here's all the stuff that we didn't have and now we want to bring it into the world for other people. But that finding your tribe, and the reason that it's so important, and I know you feel really strongly about this, Liz, is that there's so much stuff that the kind of, the do's and the don'ts, like, so what are some of the things that we shouldn't do or to watch out for when we start to get involved with spiritual communities?
Yeah. Oh God. I mean, I so wish that I'd have been able to find something like that. And yeah, absolutely. The reason why we created the Patreon community, you just need to share your stories constantly with people. And I think that any way you can do that and question and ask, because at the end of the day, even if you've got that one friend, you still can't keep them on the phone for like 8 hours while you're asking every question under the sun, right? And
or 3 a.m. when you do have an issue, or you're after having a dream download or a visitation. It's like, I need someone to talk to.
Yeah, I just I feel, and I see it in the community even now, is that if you can share an experience and not even sharing yourself, you read about other people's experiences, it gives you a sense of, okay, this is okay. I'm going to get through it. This person's experiencing this too. I'm not going crazy. It's that extra layer of validation, support, and help. And you do, unfortunately, have to keep learning through a spiritual awakening. You will get through the intense bit, But you're then left at the other side of the intense bit to carry on a new chapter of your life. So you can't
Yes.
just then, okay, suddenly put your tools down and try and like be the person you were before, because you will never be that person again.
Yeah.
So surrounding yourself and putting yourself in a safe community where you can then actually find out who you are moving forward. Like, who do you choose to be? What do you want to change? Because after the intense bit, you do then shed friends, you do change priorities, you do form different beliefs. And I feel like having those people around that are also going through that at different stages, they've been there, done that,
Yes.
you can't ask for anything else.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going through spiritual awakening, you need to get to the tribe, number one.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I do feel that, yes, there are big bang spiritual awakenings, but for anyone who has experienced a spiritual awakening, you realize you're then in a constant state of spiritual awakening. And that is why every level that you go to, whether you call it ascension, whether you call it, that you're, raising a level, that you're constantly raising your vibration, or you're going from 3D to 4D to 5D to whatever, it's those every single elevation that you are having demands a different set of tools, a different set of being, a different, mindset shift, all of these things, because we're still living a 3D, a very physical experience, regardless of what's going on spiritually. So having that sense of community, because like I see it so much in our spiritual renegades community, particularly like the activity, and like we were blown away instantly with how much people were starting to engage. And yes, people want to hear from me and Liz, but it's like they love hearing from each other. And it's like having people that are contributing and sharing what's happening with them, or a crystal they found, or a new meditation, all of these tools and things. And it just helps people with their, again, going back to that learning experience. You're learning from other people in a very safe environment.
And having an additional layer of learning, I feel, as well. I know that our next exclusive Patreon episode, because we run also different podcast episodes that just get shared in the group, is kind of taking this conversation to the next level up, which will be about the signs. How do you even know if you're going through a spiritual awakening? And then the stages, because there's a whole range of stages of spiritual awakening. So yes, the podcast is such a great place to be to learn the basics. But if you want to peel the onion back a layer further and learn a little bit more, then that's kind of the best place to head. Or wherever your tribe is. Again,
Yes.
intuitively find your tribe. Everyone's different. But yeah, I mean, if I was to learn those 8 steps early days, I think maybe things would have been easier. I may have fast-tracked some parts and felt a little bit more comfortable. I have to reflect, though, interestingly. I feel that my most recent awakening a few years ago wasn't necessarily a spiritual awakening, Diane. And I feel like it was a psychic awakening, which is, there's a bit of a
Ooh.
difference there. And I've only just realized this.
Yes. Oh God. Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you think about mine, it was very much one day normal, one day surrounded by spirits talking to me. It was like
Yeah.
an instant activation of my pineal gland, or my psychic senses exploding open. So looking back, is there a difference? Yes, I feel like there is.
Absolutely, because I know for me, like us sharing our experience, so, pre-podcast, it's like, oh my God, this is what's happening for me, this is what's happening for me. And part of me was thinking, oh my God, am I even having a spiritual awakening if, I'm not seeing things or channeling things, or, connecting with spirits who've passed? None of those things were happening for me. So I love that you're saying that that there's a differentiating between a spiritual awakening and a psychic awakening, because I definitely have not had that level of a psychic awakening. And it may never happen. It may not be something that's on my path that is, part of my journey. And for a lot of people listening, they may identify with either or both of these.
Yeah, and it really is just something recently that I've awakened to this. I feel like that how we talk about like going beyond the veil, or opening a door into different dimensions, or different I don't know, into different vibrations, stepping or suddenly the ability to be able to reach where spirit is was instantaneous. So I feel like that psychic explosion that happened to me with
Yeah.
mediumship and all of my psychic senses kind of opening really quickly, that's a psychic awakening. And it is a spiritual awakening, just in a slightly different way. And I guess they both share their similarities
Yes.
in a lot of
Yeah.
ways too. And I'm not sure, do other mediums go through that one particular point of exploding open like me? I don't know. We've heard
Well,
some stories, I guess.
yeah, but it's interesting. The person who's coming to mind for me that we had interviewed, Alicia Timmerman, who for her, hanging out the washing
Oh
one
my
day,
God.
and she started to channel, like instantly channel. So her whole life, and that was again, just when you said the word psychic awakening, that level of something just opening up is a whole other level compared to a spiritual awakening. It's like, I don't, do you want to call it the cherry on top? But
Oh
it's like,
God.
it's a whole other
It's
level of it.
scary.
And not
Mm.
everyone will experience it in that way. And there is no right, there is no wrong. And it's not even that necessarily is a stage that you may go through at all. It may not be part of your path. But there are definitely people who one day find that they can channel light language, or that, there's so many things that, but I don't think I have ever heard anyone speak about a psychic awakening versus a spiritual awakening. But that makes so much sense to me just based on our two experiences.
I will say, there's two things I'm going to say here. The first thing I want to point out is that I definitely invited that in. I did. However, there was a chain of synchronistic events, again, drawn to a book, drawn to try automatic writing. There was a point of me opening the door and giving permission for that to happen.
Yes.
Subconsciously,
Okay.
right? Subconsciously, I invited that in. And obviously, was it timing? Did I invite in? I don't know. But I think that there is always a point where our curiosity might go to a different level. And if it's the right time, it'll happen.
Yes.
The second thing I want to add is, for anyone that hasn't heard the episode with Alicia Timmerman, go
Yes.
and listen to it. It's crazy. It's amazing. It was one of our earliest episodes that literally blew our mind. So if you're just kind of getting started with the Spirituals Fun podcast, actually go back to the beginning and listen to those earlier episodes. I think I need to go and do it myself, to be honest. And at some point we have to get Alicia back on, because that's kind of another form of this. And when we talk about suddenly being open to mediumship or psychic senses, or suddenly channeling guides, which Alicia did, the other, I guess, secret tip 9, if you are resonating with more of a spiritual or psychic awakening,
Yes.
is one thing that I luckily got taught by my mentor, Lindy, actually, it wasn't even Lindy, it was someone else, but Lindy reiterated this, was early days. I got told, well, actually, if you've suddenly got all of these spirits around, you can set boundaries.
Yes,
And
same.
I realized at that point, even though I felt like a nutter, I was suddenly like, okay, well, if this shit's real, if there is a guide around me, someone that's my bouncer that stood at this door, can you stand there and not let these ghosts in, or these spirits in, when I am being a mum, when I've got my mum hat on, when I'm working? And I realized really early on that I can actually take control of what I want and what I don't want to happen, and who I want to come through and who I don't want to come through. And I was so filled with fear at that point that I made it very clear with my little guide bouncer friend, saying that no one with any lower energy, no one's stuck as a ghost on the earth plane. I don't want any of that. I just want nice people. When I light a candle, that is my symbol to say I'm ready to talk now. And the minute I did that, I didn't feel like I was drinking 50 Red Bulls a day. Instantly.
Wow. You've just prompted me to think in a different way, because again, I didn't have a psychic awakening, but on the topic of setting boundaries, because I was told that early on as well. And for me, it was because I was having such issues sleeping, and I felt like I was running a marathon, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. But I had been brought into a meditative state by my mentor, who is psychic, and she was able to tell me. And again, I still find it that I take this with a grain of salt, but apparently what I was doing was helping souls transition, like in the astral
Ah, remember
plane,
that.
helping
Yes.
souls transition. And she just said to me, she goes, if you're exhausted, she goes, they will, they don't understand the physicality, like the needs on the physical plane. So you've got to set some boundaries. And it's not like, oh, please, can I have a night off from helping souls transition? It's literally being firm and commanding, like using
Oh,
your
I
authoritative
need some
voice. Yeah,
sleep.
exactly. And I experimented with that for a while. I was like, okay, can you please stop? Or just for tonight, I need a really good night's sleep. And I got a
Yes.
really good night's sleep. Or then it got to the point where I thought, no, you know what? I need a break from this until I request to bring it back online. And I did that. I'm sure it was for a couple of weeks. And then I thought to myself, I'm going to test this to see, what the boundary I set, or was I just, was my sanity returning? And then I said that, like, I had a talk to the universe, because I didn't even have a specific guide that I was speaking to. And it was like, okay, I'm ready to do this, but I still need to be able to have a good night's sleep. So, setting the intention of that I would, yeah, participate. I would do some work, but I didn't want to be, working two jobs or 24/7. And that did work for me as well. So it was fascinating. I remember like journaling about that at that point in time as well. But
Yes.
boundaries, again, if you are someone who is having more of a psychic awakening or something that's happening that you're uncomfortable with, literally declare it. Whether you say it in your head or you say it out loud, just, say, no, I do not give permission for this, or I need this to stop, or it's only going to happen, as you said, Liz, when I light this candle and then when I blow out the candle, or, whatever the boundary is that you want to set for yourself. And experiment with it. Try these things, try and test whatever it is, and see what works for you, see what doesn't. But that, yeah. Is there
Oh, I
anything
love
else you
it.
want to say, Liz, on just now that you're having this moment of, reflection, of looking back on psychic awakening? Is there anything else you would add as a bonus to our
Mm.
list of eight tips?
I sometimes wish that I could go back and experience that real intense time, but with a different mindset. Because, the fear was so strong.
Yeah.
If someone could have told me at that point, Liz, you know what, just hang in there and really experience and sit with it and find a place to enjoy it, because it was so magical. That feeling was so powerful. It was so life-changing. If I didn't focus on the fear that time, I feel like I would have taken so many different things from that, and I would have walked
Yeah.
away feeling a little different. But honestly, what you've just said there, I feel is a good way to wrap up. It's this element of just testing, like have fun with it, like play. I remember a day going, that's it. I've had enough. You just stop doing this now. And then I had like 4 or 5 days where like nothing happened. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I didn't ask for it to go. Come back. Oh my God, did I make that up? And I suddenly felt this immense loss, like, oh no, I've just stopped something so bloody good.
Yeah.
And, I kind of spoke up there again. Okay, just open the door a little bit. Let me
A
just, is it
crack.
still there? Just a little bit. Let's feel that again. And I felt so much relief when, I suddenly felt a connection to spirit again. And I realized that, actually it's not going to ever go. This has always been there. It will always continue to be there. But just having control and experience it, and it's beautiful. It's amazing. Aren't we lucky? Aren't we
Yes.
lucky? I've tried to remember that and share that gratitude. I feel incredibly, just so much love around going through this spiritual awakening that I've been through. And everyone that's listening, I hope that there's something that you can take away today, whether you're in the middle of one, at the start of one, or you've been through 10. We need to remember, we need to continue our growth. And we always need to remember that there's another one around the corner. So
Yeah.
stay spiritually connected. keep listening to the podcast, keep doing what you've got to do. This has been a fun episode, Diane. It's been super awesome to go and explore and remember.
It is for us to have that trip down memory lane and go back with the power of hindsight. And even what you just said there about how magical it was. I think because I didn't have that exposure to, to spirits or channeling or anything like that. While, yes, there was a lot of fear, and for me, it was more mental health related. That was my experience. But there was still such magic and fascination. Like, I just have, like, I'm fascinated with human behavior at the best of times, but I felt like I was outside of myself, observing myself, fascinated by everything that was happening. So, if you're going through an awakening right now, yes, just be fascinated with yourself, like be curious about what you're going through. And, you will, through this journey, learn about vibration. The higher you can keep your vibration, the more you can keep yourself out of fear and, operate from love and curiosity and fascination and all of those happiness factors, doing the things that you love. That raises your vibration, and that just helps you have a better experience than, feeding the fear, which is generally because there are people who, their spiritual awakening is not as nice as we are actually sharing at the moment. But hopefully, even for them, if they're listening to this, that there are some messages that you can take from it. And I will ask for everyone in. We've only scratched the surface here. Just add in on Instagram particularly, and in our Patreon community, add in what did we miss? Like, what do you think would have been up there? What are some pearls of wisdom you would give to other people that are going through their spiritual awakening? Because remember, everybody at this stage is thirsty for information.
There's definitely an episode about the dark night of the soul. I feel like we need to cover at some point too. Anyway, thank you for tuning in today. Yes, reach out, please. Oh dear, I feel like I need to go and have a rest now, Diane. Maybe do a bit of meditation, make a bit of a connection with my guys, and keep enjoying the journey. So thank you so much for being here. We can't wait to see you next time.
If you've enjoyed this episode, you may like to download the accompanying resource, 8 Things to Do in a Spiritual Awakening. Just head to our website, spiritualaf.co, or check out the show notes for the direct link.
That's it for another episode. Thank you for listening.
If you're looking for a place to feel at home and want to level up your spiritual game, head to our website, spiritualaf.co, to check out our upcoming online events and for information on how to join our Spiritual Renegades community.
Plus, leave us a 5-star review with an awesome comment on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and we're going to send you a free ticket to one of our Supercharged session events.
Until next time, stay spiritual as fuck.